So Miriam, I just thought we would jump in with you telling us a little bit about your business.
Absolutely. So I started my very first business, Brunette Showroom, in 2009, October 1st, 2009. That date is important as we go through this conversation. And so it's been 16 years now since when I started the showroom. And I originally started actually in wholesale. So I represented other people's brands. I worked for somebody who I felt very lucky to have learned from. And I worked with them for 5 years in wholesale. So I did repping. So basically I represented other people's brands. I actually started as a fit model. So I fell in love with like the business of fashion, kind of always knew I wanted to work in the business of fashion, more so even than the creative side. I think I thought at the beginning, like I just loved the idea of like developing relationships with retailers and growing with them. So I did fit modeling. I actually did writing, styling. I had a column. I did a whole bunch of different things in fashion, fell in love with wholesale, started working for a wholesale showroom. Then I opened my showroom 5 years after working there. And then another, I guess, 5 years, 2014. Yeah, another 5 years later, I started Brunette the Label, my own brand.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think like most people, at least in my space, are very like familiar with Brunette the Label. But for those that don't know, do you want to just talk a little bit about like the product itself?
Yeah, absolutely. So we originally were founded as a sweatshirt brand. So the very first sweatshirt that I made was a sweatshirt that said brunette is the new black on it. I originally made it as a marketing tool for my original business. So I hosted media events. I decided I wanted to kind of like develop relationships in the industry with people. And because I had a showroom, you really kind of evolved all the time with new brands. It wasn't my own brand. It was like, I was getting new brands all the time. And so I feel like it was kind of hard to like really explain like the values that I have as a business person or just how I wanted to like come across in fashion just with representing other people's brands. So I hosted basically a media event and made a sweatshirt, and we spray painted these backpacks that said brunette is the new black. We carried a bunch of items from like the other brands. It was basically like a gifting media suite. We made bags and a sweatshirt that said that. I wore my sweatshirt to a trade show, and one of my retailers saw it and said, oh, we could totally carry that in our store. So that's how it evolved. So it really started with sweatshirts, just graphics on sweatshirts. So Brunette, we own the trademark to Brunette and Blonde on clothing. Then I think the first collection I did was all in French, which is so funny.
Yeah.
I have like obsession with like France. It's like one of my biggest inspirations is France. I feel like I live there in a different lifetime. Every time I go there, I feel most myself.
Okay.
So it was just, we came up like, I think we had Cheval. I'm a horse girl. We put Cheval on a sweatshirt and just like kind of other like words. It really wasn't like a lot of thought into it, I guess, maybe, to be honest. I just wanted to create something really cute and fun that our retailers could sell. And because I had a lot of history in fashion, I really understood what our customers were kind of like looking for.
Right.
So it really helped me kind of like put together this cute little like sweatshirt collection. We like bought blank sweatshirts, put graphics on it. And honestly, it was kind of before graphic sweatshirts became popular, after like the 80s and 90s. There's always like, fashion is so cyclical, right?
Right.
So, the Club Monaco sweatshirt, and then the Tommy Hilfiger sweatshirt, and then, Aritzia had their fleece and their tracksuits, and then it kind of had died down and everything was very clean and plain, kind of how I feel like clean girl aesthetic happened this year. Mm-hmm. And then I felt that the cycle was coming back. So we made a couple different seasons, different like kind of graphic branded sweatshirts. I had a team member that worked with me for like 11 years and he was with me at the time. We did it. We like literally got them printed and packed them out of my own house for our wholesale accounts. And I went to all the trade shows and sold them. So that's how it started. And then I just did graphic sweatshirts, and then I made a sweatshirt that just said brunette. And then a girlfriend of mine who was blonde, she was like, do you want to do a collab? She was an influencer. And then, so we did that, and it kind of naturally evolved from there. And then we obviously, one of our values is we're all babes. And so not obviously, that is one of our values. And so we added all the natural hair colors because of that. So we have jet black, we have redhead, and then we added natural. So just trying to obviously have everything. And that's what the product was for a long time. We added t-shirts, but mostly just fleece. And then after COVID, well, actually in 2016, I actually tried to add some fashion into the brand, but most of our retailers, it was when the blonde and brunette sweatshirts really took off.
Right.
So I have a self-funded business. I didn't receive funding at all. So there was only so much money. And I basically tried, and it didn't do as well as the sweatshirts. So we went back to the sweatshirts.
Okay.
And then did that again until COVID. and kept working on mostly like fleece and French terry products, just really casual, not a lot of structure.
Right.
And then in COVID, when all other brands went into fleece, I was like, this is my opportunity to kind of evolve the brand. So I went into knitwear originally as like matching sets.
Right.
We always did a little bit of outerwear. So the outerwear we did had like graphics on the back. But now the brand has really evolved and we do a lot of basics. We do knitwear. The like graphic sweatshirt parts actually become the like least kind of big part of the business, but it's,
Right.
I'm a different person than I was when I started the brand. I'm older and I like really needed to evolve the brand. And so now we do, lots of outerwear, more fashion. We still do sweatshirts and we still do a lot of things with like our value system attached to it. So we'll always have a Babe Sporting Babe sweatshirt and we always have our hair color sweatshirts. It's kind of a classic like heritage.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's a lot more fashion. Like even this fall, winter 24, you guys are going to be like really surprised. There's a collection that's coming out that's literally I created for myself.
Okay.
And it's just everything I felt that like I wanted to wear that I couldn't find.
Yeah.
But it's definitely like a much more elevated in a sense, still affordable and still like within, one of my goals is to make clothing for everyone. So I always want to create products that everybody could wear if you wanted to. But this is definitely the most like evolved the brand has ever been.
Right. When you say evolved, the furthest departure from the sweatshirts in the beginning. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the furthest departure. Like we have skirts and pants and blazers and we've kind of dabbled in different categories. Like we just launched our basics collection yesterday and that's kind of become our biggest part of the brand.
Right.
Like what I'm wearing right now, just like great rib basic pieces.
Yeah.
I personally have felt there was a huge void in the market for like well-priced, really good quality basics.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, so we've actually started that. This is my third delivery doing it.
Okay.
My third season, and it's the first time I feel like we've ever really like showed it exactly how I intended it to be. And our retailers are really stepping into it with us, which is it was like a bit of a slow burn. It was really cool. Like I feel like it's one of those things, if you know it's right for you, you can't stop.
Right.
Yeah, like obviously you don't want to put yourself in a bad position by keeping moving forward with something that's it wasn't not working, but now it's like becoming almost the biggest part of the brand.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to go back a little bit to the beginning.
Okay.
What was the catalyst for you? Like, what were you feeling? What were you experiencing when you wanted to step out and do your own thing with the showroom? Like, do you remember?
I do.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. I'm really growth driven.
Okay.
I'm like, I always need to keep growing. It's funny now that I'm older. I'm like, I'm more tired. I'm more sleepy driven.
Yeah.
But at the time I'd hit what I believed to be my max capacity within the role that I had.
Right.
In hindsight, it's funny, like what you think you know versus what you know later. But there was really no other option. Like I just felt I had to do it. I remember walking with my dad down the seawall and him being like, "Are you sure?" And I was just sure. I just knew.
Yeah.
There has been some like other businesses along the way to get me to where I am. Like I started this like pashmina business. I would like buy and sell pashminas and like basically sell them out of my car to like help pay for my business when it started. So I developed this kind of like grouping of different color pashminas. I found like a cash and carry place, which is somewhere that just like holds stock. And I went to like offices and like did gifts for like guys for their wives for Valentine's Day, like film studios. My sister works in film. I'd go to the film studios. And then I'd package them into these like cute little boxes and I'd deliver them.
Crazy.
And so that funded my showroom. But yeah, no, I actually asked my boss at the time to partner with me. I knew I needed to do something different. I knew I wanted to be my own boss. I have no idea why, which is funny because I just always knew. Like I asked my sister when we were like 14 if we should start something called Mir Soph because her name's Sophie and my name is Miriam. Like I think I always kind of knew.
Yeah, that's how your mind was working, and that's how you kind of.
Yeah, I think I have a different mind. Like I have an entrepreneurial mind and always have.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Growth. I had to keep growing, and I wasn't growing anymore. And so I asked my boss at the time if he wanted to partner. He'd had his family business for like 60 years. He said no. We cried. But what he did let me do was start my business while I was working there.
Amazing.
Yeah, which I think was my first kind of Babe Sporting Babes business moment. And it was like he didn't need to do that. And I stayed and trained the person that worked. I stayed for 6 months and trained somebody.
Okay.
And he let me go to kind of a couple different trade shows and look for brands when I had time to do it in between my job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And so, okay, you just needed growth. And so it's 2014, so we're 10 years into it now.
2009.
2009. Okay. So 15 years into it now.
It's 16 in like 2 weeks.
Okay. Exciting. Yeah.
Crazy.
October 1st. Yeah. So in that 16 years, have you felt that way again? Like, have you felt that way? Like, oh, I need to grow it. I need to do something different, or stagnant. Like, that's the word that sometimes I use, is it's starting to feel a bit stagnant. Have you felt that way?
So that is so funny that you're asking me that. It's been such an interesting year. I didn't feel that way at all until I became a mom. Mm. Yeah. So I feel like I've never been more sure of 1,000% of what I wanted in my life more until I had a baby, which I wasn't really expecting. I think because I had a baby like older. I was 40 when I had it, I was 40 when I had him. Was I 39? No. Yeah, 39, turning 40 when I had him. No, I was pregnant when I was 40. So yeah, I remember that because it was not a fun 40th.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
I was like, I totally remember because it was not fun. But now it's interesting. Obviously our economy has like been going through an interesting time. Yeah. The fashion space is really interesting. It's really hard for a brand to you're going to ebb and flow. If you're around for a long time, it's going to be, we had our graphic sweatshirts that were really good. And then I had to come up with something new. And then now we're set. So from like a product perspective, I've never been more excited.
Till now.
From energy perspective, I probably have never been so drained.
Yeah.
So it's because I feel like there's no time. Yeah. And I'm like, do I want a business bigger? Do I actually want a smaller business? And I have never felt like that before. I've always been like, go, grow.
Yeah.
Bigger the better. And then I split. The two businesses were under one roof until last year. And I divided off my showroom and actually partnered my cousin. I've never had a partner ever.
Right.
I had one with my pashmina business, but like within my businesses, I've never had a partner, and it's not it wasn't like a comfortable space, but she approached me and said that she was looking for opportunities. She is the most loyal, amazing, hardworking, kind of incredible person in the world. And she's worked there for 8 years. And I kind of thought about it and I was like, well, maybe the showroom, because the showroom kind of became the like afterthought.
Right.
So it was my first business, my baby. I drove across Western Canada selling samples out of my car. Like it was my baby. And then the brand started and became like it's sparkly, like little sister. And then it grew kind of differently than I was expecting. I never really thought about what the growth would be, but it did its own thing. And then it became actually kind of complicated because the businesses were under one roof. And everybody wanted to work for the sparkly little sister. And so people would come in working for this other awesome business, but it just like didn't have the same energy. So we needed to divide them.
Right.
And Mackenzie's passion my cousin was always the showroom. She loves the brand. She loves both, but we represent the brand in the showroom. Okay. And so she partnered with me, and that's been amazing. Yeah. Because it's like something so much off my plate. Like this, she's the operator of the business. I like support, but it still has its own like legs, but I don't have to carry as much of the weight as I was.
Right.
And she's done an incredible job growing it. Yeah, it's just kind of like changed the way I viewed things. And so now I'm kind of like, do I want this more kind of like personal brand?
Yeah.
Like, do I want it to be, we're kind of like making it back to be a lot more about me, about my favorite things, which kind of sounds egotistical, which I don't mean it to be, but it feels more authentic. Like the product feels like very much me.
Yeah. Like stuff that you would wear.
Yeah. And just kind of, I'm really proud. Like I don't ever want to make anything again that I don't feel is like amazing.
Yeah.
And I feel like you get caught up in like doing what you think you should do and growing in the way that you think you should grow.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was becoming a mom, the combination between after COVID, the economy, all those things.
Right.
It was kind of like, do I really want this much stress, or like, what kind of life do I have? And I feel like I'm kind of, what kind of life do I want? And I feel like I'm kind of like in that kind of question right now. So I'm not sure.
So it's so funny. Like I just have to share my experience because in so many ways it was identical to yours. And same thing, like for years and years and years, chased growth, development, give me the biggest problem, give me the biggest challenge. I just loved that feeling of being uncomfortable and trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And then I became a mother.
Yeah.
and I talk about it quite a bit in my podcast, but what being a mother did to me is, first of all, it kind of makes you feel like Superwoman.
Yeah.
Right. So all of a
You
sudden,
almost can't believe you can do that.
yeah. Yeah. Seriously. Like you just like all of a sudden you're like, I can do anything.
Yeah,
Right.
if I
But
can.
you're also tired. So
Yeah.
like, don't get me wrong, but it does make you understand just really how capable and how much capacity you have.
Yeah.
But the other thing it did for me is it shook up my values.
Oh, yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm not just thinking about the next project, the next challenge, the next role. I'm thinking about like 80, 90-year-old me.
I know.
And from a value perspective, like what is the life that I want to live?
Yeah.
And what is it the thing that I want to pour my energy into and create so I can be really, really proud of, right?
Yeah.
And it's not about the next step anymore. Now it's like the bigger picture.
But
so
it's
I had
hard to, that becomes a complicated conversation in your brain.
It does. Because now you're like all those, that path that you were on might not be the right one anymore. And like growth for like, and there's so much momentum, right? Like you're talking about growth and getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but like you're on this path, it has its own momentum, but you might get to the place where it's like, oh wait, though I don't have the energy for all of it. So I really want to do a piece of it really, really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I wonder, I talked to lots of women about it. I had my son obviously older. So a lot of my friends had their kids like quite a bit younger. So different life places. So I don't have as many people to kind of like share that with because it was like a totally different time.
Right.
Like a lot of my friends, had them in their like late 20s and early 30s.
Yeah. And there's like blessings, there's pros and cons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think
I wouldn't have been ready one day earlier. I could have waited like 5 years, but I would have been, Anyways, I totally could have.
Seriously, I feel the same way. Yeah. And I was 36, but similar experience. I feel like, So where do you, and like, I'm going to ask you a question and I know you're not going to know the answer, but where do you suspect that this journey is going to take you?
I see this like vision.
Okay.
Of a bit more of like a balance of like living a lifestyle. Like my husband and I talked about this recently. I'm like, I don't know, like you set off on this life that you think that you want and then you get to it and you're like, is this it? Like, is this actually all of that? Because that's what I wanted when I was like 30. Right. But I don't know, like I feel I just see this is so funny. I see this like farm where my like horses are in my backyard and I like work out of a studio in the barn, like above it. And I have like a different quality of life that's not, I feel like I'm always on the go. Like I literally got up at 4 something this morning, got ready, did my hair, drove to the airport, got on a plane. I'll be home tomorrow morning. We have a neighborhood block party, so not that stressful. And then I have to like make sure on Sunday I have to start packing and move. And then I fly to Toronto on this day. It's like, it's because it's still happening. Like the kind of on the go is still there, but I can tell that this is not like the long-term goal for me. Like it's not
sustainable.
It's not what I want. Whereas before I became a mom, I travel so much less now. I was on an airplane every week. I loved it. I was gone all the time. Mm-hmm. Like we were, whether it was vacation or work, gone all the time. Like now I will do anything I can to like stay home.
Yeah.
Like it's just totally, totally different. So I think it's like creating a bit more of the environment that inspires me where I live whereas before I used to travel to get inspired.
Right.
Now I struggle with the inspiration. Like I was in Paris in the summer for the Olympics and I was like, oh, this is my place. Like I could totally live here. I had this vision of my son and I sitting along the river having a wine when he was like 20. I don't know, as well as pregnant. I kept seeing this like same vision.
Yeah.
So I don't know, there must be something there. Like maybe we'll end up there a little bit, but
yeah.
I just think creating a environment that makes you feel the most yourself. And I feel like I'm trying to like figure out what that is now in this stage of my life.
Right.
And we know we're moving our office. I always wanted this big office. We got this big giant office. I want a small office. I used to want to sit in my own space and create this like own environment. I'm like, I want to work in the office beside all my team members. Like, I feel like I realized that actually what I had when it was a bit smaller made me feel a little bit more myself. Whereas now that it's gotten a little bigger, it feels a bit more isolating.
Yeah. And you don't know till you've kind of evolved.
Exactly. And I'm like, you hit these marks of things that you think you want. And then you're like, wait, it was super cool, but maybe that's actually not quite it.
Yeah. So on this little farm surrounded by horses and your baby, what is the work that you'd be doing?
Probably the same work. I actually love what I do. That's the one thing I think I'm like the most inspired by, like developing young people. That's like really big for me. And that's like probably what Babes for Babes ultimately where it came from. I'm the most like passionate about that. And I feel like it's been the hardest thing to do in the last couple of years, becoming a mom and also dealing with a lot of the kind of like outside of my control things, having to sort of change the operations of the business. I haven't been able to develop kind of newer team members as much as I used to. So I think that's one of the things that I'm really looking forward to doing. But yeah, it is the work. I love what we're doing. And I feel like the brand right now is like become what I want it to be. So I think it would still be that.
Still be the brand, just a little bit, maybe different environment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so developing young people, we weren't planning on talking about this, but what does that look like? Like, what are you seeing are some of those gaps or some of those like learnings that young people need as they're coming up through your business specifically?
Well, I think I always hired quite junior people, mostly like from a self-funded business that was small. Like I couldn't afford to bring in kind of any like high experience C-level people. So most of the long-term management that I've had kind of started as like interns or very junior team members. And so I think it's being able to create a space where people feel safe and comfortable so that they can grow. And then whatever they do and carry on to, as long as they like leave better than we found them, kind of, or I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but basically when they leave and carry on, that they feel that they developed and learned skills that will take them to the next level. To me, that is like, I've done my job.
Right.
Like that really is something that I feel passionate about, but I think you have to create like a safe space to do that. And I think like I have a lot of women, mostly women employees. I've had a couple different men, but mostly all women. So I feel like I get a lot of kind of young women, and I'm incredibly sensitive. It used to be something I felt very embarrassed about. It was mostly discussed to me as a young person as something that was negative.
Right.
So it was always something I felt very embarrassed about or ashamed of if people would say, oh, she's just sensitive. And so I have tried really hard to teach or support, I don't know what the correct word would be, young, sensitive people, that it's actually their superpower, that they can use it. And for me now, that is the thing that I can walk into a room and tell you how everyone's feeling, which is like a blessing and a curse.
Yes.
But it also helps me read people, and I can lead people better based on, I recently had an experience where somebody that was a new team member sent me a message that would have come across not good if I didn't understand that why she was doing, but because I can read people and I'm sensitive, I knew the reason why. So then I could give her opportunity to like learn for next time. We had a great conversation, moved on. It's been like amazing.
Right.
But I feel like if I wasn't sensitive, I would have been like, that's rude.
Yeah, you would have gotten your back up.
Yeah, and it wouldn't have gone well. And so I think it is just giving these opportunities of, I'm not perfect. I've had a pretty stressful couple years, probably not managed myself in the best ways possible. So I'm not just like an angel saying that like I do it all the time, but I think that's my biggest goal and my biggest strength. And if I can use that, I feel like that's my biggest like passion.
Right. Yeah. To use your sensitivity to empower it in others.
Yeah.
And allow them to like get to that place of like really feeling really empowered and like kind of embodying their gifts is what I always say, right?
Yeah. Embodying their gifts and just like genuinely using the qualities that they are hard on themselves about as their strengths.
Yeah. And then like they're hard on themselves about that. And you probably were as well. It's like, it's not a trait that we traditionally associate with like leadership and running your own business and those executive skills. So I think we've again created an environment that it's not necessarily as widely as accepted.
But it's actually the most important thing. But yeah, I've had a business for 16 years. I've had multiple employees. Like I haven't always probably led at my best in different moments where I'm dealing with stress. So like I just want to acknowledge that too, because nobody is perfect. And I think it's like acknowledging that from like a relationship being mutual.
Yeah.
I think like it's our responsibility to develop young talent, the next generation. It's like, I forget, it's not Rumi. It's somebody that says like, basically I want to like offer an opportunity like for the next generation to stand above me. Basically I stand in the sacrifices of a million women, seeing what can I do to,
I think
so
it
that
is
they can go farther. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I just think that's like, I don't know, our responsibility. It's one of my favorite things. And I think it's, a healthy environment for young people to work in is the most life-changing thing. And a bad environment for young people to work in is debilitating. And I've had both in my office in periods of time. Mm-hmm. One of the things I'm the most protective of is the energy in the space. And when I went on mat leave, it got ruined.
Right. Because you weren't there.
I wasn't there. And it was it was multiple things, a lot situational, but also I couldn't control it as much. Right. And I came back and it was kind of like a different group of people, and the energy was not right. And it's honestly taken me a really long time to be able to figure it out. But I look at kind of the environment it was kind of when I walked into it.
Right.
And, you know, it wasn't a great environment. So I've seen it in both ways. But I also have team members that like send me messages being like, honestly, it was, I'm not easy. Like I put really high expectations on people for themselves if I think they can do it. As I do for myself.
Right.
Right. And so I think just making sure that you can do it kindly is important too. And I think that that's like a trait that gets missed a lot.
Yeah. I like, without having worked for you, I'm going to assume that you're an incredible leader, because a lot of the things, like we talk a lot about leadership and effective leadership on this podcast. And that's one of my big motivators actually for creating the podcast as well, is I think that the way that we've traditionally led for the last 50, 60, 100, insert whatever number you want in there, is not the way that we're going to effectively lead moving forward.
Yeah.
And I think one of those first traits, like one of the traits that you talk about is one of the ones that traditionally we have not done, is admitting that you can't always show up your best, right? Because I think up to this point, we've put leaders on a pedestal.
Like they're inhuman.
And like really create an environment where they can't come back and be like, hey, listen, I didn't handle myself well in that situation. I'm feeling this at home. I'm dealing with this. And that's why it's going to change this conversation we're having a little bit. Like that, putting them on a pedestal has hurt a lot of everybody in business or in a corporate space or in their own business, right? I think just admitting your mistakes, understanding that culture is so important, like that energy that you create in a space. Like I think that's really key. Yeah.
Yeah. I think what you said, kind of talking about coming back when the conversation isn't great, you know, not showing up in a way that maybe isn't how you want to show up. I talk a lot to like my team members about that. If you have a meeting that you don't like how it went, you don't have to end it there.
Right.
You can have another conversation. You can follow up and say, I'd love 5 more minutes. I feel like I didn't like how this went. Like it's up to you to be able to like repair things that didn't work. And same as us, like you said, as leaders.
Right.
We are human. You know, every single person that works in this space has problems going on outside of their workspace. Life is hard. You have no idea what's going on for people. So I think treating everybody a little bit more human would probably help us all.
Yeah. It's about being human, right? Like we talk a lot about like EDI and this, that, and the other, but it's like really just showing up from a place of curiosity versus a place of judgment. Full stop, all the time, at home, at work. Like that's really just the start, right?
Yeah.
Has that always been intuitive for you, the way that you lead?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I'm yes and no. I am a middle child of a big family. That is like my true nature. Like I always tried to stay out of the way. I always probably was at the sacrifice to myself, like a bit of I'll just let it go. You like trying to kind of peacemaker, I guess.
Right.
And then I think I am a natural leader. I do actually think that it's like natural for me. But maybe the place I was in my family probably like pushed it down a little bit. And then I remember very clearly one day having a conversation with one of my team members where I was feeling uncomfortable about not being direct. They didn't know what I was asking them for. And I remember just being like, this is what I need and this is why. And they're like, great. And then we move on. And I would always feel worried to like hurt someone's feelings, make them feel bad, like make it uncomfortable. And then I just remember one day being like, no, it's just direct.
Yeah.
Kind, direct, move on.
Kind, direct. Yeah.
And move on.
Yeah.
Like not carry it. Like we walk away from the conversation, it's done. So I feel like that was the hardest part of my like leadership, would probably like feeling nervous to like rock the boat, but actually being nervous to rock the boat made it way worse.
Right. Oh yeah, way worse. Yeah.
But other than that, because I'm quite intuitive, I'm like a very intuitive person in lots of different ways.
Right.
I think that that's always been natural for me to like lead in the way that I do, because it's like the most authentic for me.
Most authentic. I love that. Yeah. So I'm thinking about Mackenzie. That's your cousin's name, right? And just really any woman. Like obviously Mackenzie has the benefit of being coached by you and supported by you as she kind of journeys down this business venture. But just any woman that's starting, any man or woman, but like what is the advice, or what are some of the key lessons learned along the way, or the things that you would want to know back when you started? And now listen, I know
that's always such a hard question for me, because I'm like, I don't know. I'm glad I didn't know.
Yeah.
I actually am so glad I didn't know, because I probably wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
I think I have a plan. My dad always says that to me when things get really, really hard. You need a plan.
Right.
And I feel like that isn't necessary. Like I am a plan driven kind of person, but when things get really, really hard and you kind of shut down, you really actually need to like push forward and make a plan. So I think in any situation, even if the plan isn't the way it goes, have a plan. The only things that are authentic work, try not to do what other people are doing because it just won't feel the same.
Yeah.
And you can be kind and be a business person and have success. You don't have to do what other people are doing in that way as well. Or I remember just, the fashion industry was not a collaborative space at all. And so when I first started, I always would go and bring like my retailers into other showrooms and be like, this is the coolest brand. Because I'm like, if you do really well with this brand, you're going to be more successful. And then both of our brands will grow. And that wasn't really the space. And I had a really negative experience with somebody who tried to like steal some brands when I first started and just like really awful stuff, said really awful stuff about me. And I remember at the time, my boyfriend was a pretty like ruthless guy. I was like, you have to say something and you have to like call her out. And I was like, but then I'll be like her. And if I do what she did, then we're both going to be like that and nobody's going to grow. And I actually remember being like, I could be like her or I could be like me. And that isn't like my nature. And I never addressed it. And we like carried on, lots of things happened and it was exactly the way it was supposed to happen.
How old were you at that time?
28.
Miriam, it took me about 40 years to learn that lesson. Like, yeah, that's amazing.
Well, thank you. But I was heartbroken because I'm really sensitive. So actually I was really upset.
Right.
And then but then what she had done at the time, the girl that had hired me was like, stood up for me.
Right.
And it was like, now we're still really close. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, you get the people, like relationships are authentic. The people that like are meant for you will stay. And the bad stuff, and everything. And this one, I would say this is something I've learned since I became a mom. And it was actually something I felt more as a mom, but actually now as a business person, I think it probably rings a little more true, which is everything is a moment, good and bad. So when you're doing awesome, it's not going to last forever. When you're struggling a lot, it's not going to last forever. Yeah. So keep going.
Be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think all those things that we attach to our ego and our self-esteem, those titles or those awards or those moments that are really positive, like they don't really matter because like
they really don't matter.
You're still you on the downside of that.
Yeah. And when you have those good moments, like try something I wish I had done more is maybe like acknowledge them a little bit more. Like we did a collaboration with Juicy Couture. And I remember being in college and like I wanted a sweatsuit so bad and I couldn't afford it. Mm-hmm. And then, like 10 years later, we're doing a collaboration with the same brand. And it was a big moment. We did a fashion show. We like announced it and it was with the owners in New York. So we had to go there and meet with them. And it was such a big deal, but it just felt like this quick moment in time. But I know when I look back like in my life, I'm going to be like, wow, that's like, I think the kind of juxtaposition between the years.
Yes.
And I think that I wish I'd kind of sat in those moments a little bit longer when I was just busy.
Yeah. Present moment is everything. But yeah, I think that's when you really learn as a mom.
Yeah.
Or dad.
Good and bad though, because I also have had to deal with more stress than I've ever had to deal with in the last 2 years. And I feel like I'm just kind of coming out on the other side. And I'm like the things that I learned, like when it's really hard, you actually learn more. And I used to always hear that. You'd hear that, the quotes about it and all of that. Yeah. But you learn how strong you are. You learn what you can handle. You learn maybe what you need, what you don't need. Mm-hmm. But I do feel like you learn more when it's hard.
You do, 100%. Yeah. You work harder when it's hard. Yeah. Yeah. When it's good and it's popular and it's flying off the shelf and everybody's excited about it, that momentum carries you. Yeah. Or like, that's just one example of easy versus hard. But yeah, I think when it's not there, it's different.
Yeah. And just like throwing into the mix of work and mom and economy and like the business is great. It's more I have found, I don't know about you but it's more the kind of like ways of life. Like everything has changed so much. So we've had to just like learn to change. Yeah. We learned to change during COVID. Then after COVID, we learned to change during the like kind of buyer cycles. Like everything's different, or the manufacturing cycles are harder, or the shipping cycles are harder. Everybody's struggling just a little bit more and everyone seems a little bit more stressed. So then they're a little slower to deal with things and everything's a little delayed. Like I just feel like there's nothing like as smooth kind of as it used to be. And I think there's a reason for that too.
Yeah, I think the world is changing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that I think also, and like, I'm a big believer of what's put in front of you is meant to teach you. Yeah. And I think collectively right now, everything to your point feels a little slower, a little harder. Everything's just a little bit different post-COVID. But I think what's the lesson in that, and it was the big lesson that came in COVID, is change.
Change. Exactly. I think we're meant to change. So when you ask me, like, what do you see? And I'm like, I don't think I would have looked for any change if things didn't feel a little bit more hard or harder. I don't know what the correct English is there, but yeah, I don't think I would have looked for what I actually truly wanted, which is really nice. And it's just, you get forced into these things that you wouldn't do if you were just if everything was just easy.
Yeah. The art of saying no.
Oh my gosh, that was my New Year's resolution every single year. Say no more, stay home more. Like I do a lot of manifesting, like writing manifesting. I actually been doing it less lately. I need to get better at it, but I do always a word of the year and then like a statement of the year. And it was like always that. And I actually, for the first time probably ever, like cancel. I'm like a yes person. It's my worst quality and my best quality because I can be really fun too. Yeah. But
I'm grateful you said yes to this.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to be here. But yes, I am a yes person. But like, yeah, there was a big party we were supposed to go to as a family last Saturday, and we lost our childcare, and like I would have just always gone on my own. Mm-hmm. And I like went to bed instead at like 7:30 and woke up in the morning. I was like, I did it finally. I just didn't go.
I felt great. And it felt great.
Yeah, I was happy.
Yeah. Awesome. So you touched on it a little bit, right? Like that more relationship collaborative based business versus the competitive environment. So how does that show up for you today, 15 years into that journey?
Well, it's interesting because the fashion industry, like I mentioned before, was not a collaborative space. Now everybody's collaborations. Collaborations are like a thing. I do think it can still be a little bit like not that way, but I think mostly, you know, influencers want to be friends with each other and go to events together, and brands want to do collaborations, and that is the biggest difference. It was not that. Like, there is a reason I own the trademark to Babes, Sporting Babes. It was not used before.
Yeah.
Like, collaboration over competition wasn't something that was talked about a lot. Right. It was kind of like, keep your cards close. Like, don't let anyone in. And that's just like so not me at all. I'm the most open person in so many ways. I'm like, this is my favorite customer. You guys need to sell to them. This is like doing really well for us. Like, here you go. And because I genuinely think it's like an energy. You get, you give, you get, you give. If you just constantly take, you're not eventually, I don't know, it sometimes doesn't totally work because obviously there's like some very like wealthy people that don't seem like they could give very much, but maybe in a different lifetime. Yeah. But I do feel like that just for me is very authentic. It's very the way that I like believe in doing business. Like I just genuinely believe that the energy is there, and in fashion it has changed. And now it's like everybody does collaborations, right? You know, it's like every brand is collaborating with another brand, and it's really cool to see. Was that the question?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I think like it may not have changed if Babes supporting Babes wasn't a thing.
I think locally, maybe like Canadian brands for sure. Like I mentioned to you before, when I first had Babes supporting Babes, people made so much fun. When I first started my brand, people were so mean behind my back. It was insane. Like I know it existed. I actually have a girlfriend of mine that told me she actually quit the industry because she couldn't believe how nice people were to my face. And then behind my back were so mean. Wow. But I knew, but it was like, I was so sure what I was doing. It felt so right. And so it didn't like stop me. It hurt my feelings, but it didn't stop me. And it's funny watching, but that actually had nothing to do with me. People never do things that are unkind if like they're happy.
Mary, I so needed to hear that. Like yesterday, I just heard from somebody that like, oh, there's like this whole group of people that are making fun of my podcast and like watching my, and I was
they're jealous because they didn't do it.
I needed to hear that. Good. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. But you know what? When you like, well, it doesn't actually ever matter if it gets massive or doesn't, because you're doing it because you want to do it. Yeah. But it is nothing to do with you.
Yeah. That's the key.
It is nothing to do with you. Yeah. And honestly, it's hurtful. I get it.
Yeah. It took me aback. Like for somebody, like I don't really like. I feel the same way. Like I kind of always intuitively know that. Inhuman. But when it's like your passion and your like project that you put so much heart and soul into, like how do you not like it? It's great.
Have you ever made fun of anybody that you like didn't feel intimidated by?
No. Yeah. I try not to make fun of anybody
but
ever.
Of course, but we're all human. We've all kind of made mistakes where like, you know, you join the conversation or whatever. Yeah. I've never met a happy person that's talking about somebody behind their back.
Right? Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. They're too busy like thinking
they're jealous,
about their
busy, or they're just like there is something about that person that makes them feel bad.
Right.
It's about them, not about you. You can't take that on. You're doing you. You're doing awesome.
Yeah. No, and that's great. Like what you say, it's great to hear that the fashion industry has come that far in 15 years.
I don't think it totally fully probably authentically exists. Like I think the collaborations happen. I'm sure there's like it's just opened up a lot. Like I think it has, and it was not like that.
Yeah.
Like
slowly.
our showrooms go on the road together now. Before people would just go on their own. Like it's so weird. It also makes it harder for retailers.
Yeah.
Like why wouldn't you go in the same space and just everybody can come? Yeah. But so everybody's worried that someone's going to take something from them, and I think we're learning that actually we're much better together.
Much better together. Yeah. Yeah. So, and we kind of like may have touched on this a little bit. I'm going to ask a question in a slightly different way than you may have been asked in the past. So I think people always ask, like, what is your passion? What is the thing that you like the passion? Have you found your passion? What is it? And are you doing it? And I kind of I'm starting to have a slightly different perspective on that, because what I think is it's not necessarily the what, but the how. So it's like the gift that you have and like how you show up is often the way that you're showing up at home, work, and all those different places. Like when I say that, does something come up for you in terms of like what your special gift or your superpower might be?
I think my superpower is reading people and being able to like make them feel good and grow, probably sometimes at the detriment to myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say probably there's a lot of exput.
Yeah.
A lot of exput. But yeah, I think people are like developing young people is probably my biggest passion. I think I mentioned this before. I'm a horse person. I have like an extreme passion outside of work and my family, which I'm very grateful to have. And now I'm kind of combining it with my work. And a lot of the like collections are based around like sort of this like horse girl person that's me. And like horses are kind of like trending, which is hilarious to me because it's like really ebbs and flows. Horse girls are either like totally weird or awesome. But I think because I have a passion outside of work, that's unusual. It's something that was more common, I think, like even 100 years ago. Everybody did like, they'd go and do things that they like love to do just for the sake of loving it. I don't think that's as common anymore as adults. And so I think that helps me a lot in my professional life and my life at home because I have something that is just for me.
Just for you.
It is like the thing that makes me feel the most myself. And I get to do that. And I know how lucky I am. And it really like lets me show up if I don't do that, I'm not as good.
Yeah.
And it's almost like gives me my intuition or something. It's really weird. But I'd say like my superpower is definitely like reading the room, reading people being able to kind of like massage situations that would have otherwise been really hard. So it can help people grow instead of.
Yeah.
But I notice when I'm exhausted, it dies, like it goes away. And then I don't do it. And I can see the effects on people when I'm not like that too, which I think has shown up more as a mom because I'm more tired. Yes. And I have noticed like that might be a little bit one of the reasons why I want less people and like a smaller business because I feel like I have less to give.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I understand. And that also might shift as your babe gets a little bit older.
I think it will. Yeah. I can already feel it shifting a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm noticing that quite a bit. And I like for the first shift I saw it was like at 18 months when they're not like baby anymore. Yeah. And then like the next big shift I saw just recently as she turns 4.
Okay. Somebody else told me 4.
Yeah. I feel like 4, which is at the beginning of it. But I feel like at the end of this year, I feel like she's going to be because I remember somebody even saying that to me. I remember like going back to, the gym and working out right after I had her, like 5-6 months or whatever, when I can't remember what the timeline was. And I remember like telling my girlfriend about like how much I was struggling with the sleep deprivation and like the like no time for myself, et cetera, et cetera. And she's like, yeah, no, like you'll be fine. It just takes like 5 years. And I remember thinking like
5 years?
It felt like an eternity, but like I blinked and here we are.
Yeah. Oh, it's so fast. Time goes so fast now.
So fast. Yeah.
And it's like changes everything.
Yeah.
It really does. And it doesn't change anything. Like that's the part that I find weird. I'm exactly the same person as I was before I had my son.
Yeah.
You see like moms and you're like, whoa, you're just you just had a baby. Like I think of my parents, I'm like, they're just me. They just got older and had kids. Like, it's like you think of people in such a different light. I didn't see that before. And also, like women are superheroes. It's crazy.
Yeah. And, we're going to talk more about it tonight at the Chocolate Care Fashion Show, but timelines, right? I've kind of briefly connected on that. And like, even having a baby at 36 or having a baby at 40, I think those are non-traditional expectations and timelines. Like, did that ever play in for you, or was it just like, nope, this is my timeline, I'm ready, and away we go?
It actually bothered me when people started to ask me a lot towards the end, which I don't really get annoyed by things because it was actually really hard to get pregnant at the end. And so, but no, like I did IVF, I got one egg, have one beautiful boy. I got so lucky. It was like so meant to be. It was like I got like it was a miracle.
Yeah.
And I always knew I would have one baby, and I always knew to have one baby around 40. Like I kind of always knew. I always thought it would be a girl.
Ah, okay.
And then I was like, a boy. What am I going to do with a boy? And then you get exactly what you're supposed to get. It's insane. But I just feel really grateful, I think, maybe because it was really hard at the end. And I was like, is this going to happen or not? And I had like some beautiful experiences. Like I totally felt my grandmother the whole time. I'd like ask her for things and she'd like show me, and then I'd ask again and she'd show me. Like I was like, I need a sign. And all my vitals were her birthday.
Ah, okay.
And the nurse was like, well, if you believe in omens. And I always thought it was my grandpa. And then I see lots of intuitives and stuff. And one of them was like, no, it's not your grandpa. It's your grandma.
Ah, okay.
And I could like feel her. And yeah, it was neat. Like I asked for a sign one day and there was like a pink flower sitting outside our house. It was like January 6th. All of my dates of like my retrievals were equaled the number of her birthday too.
Okay.
It was like crazy stuff. And so I don't know. I just feel like you get exactly, it's kind of a hard thing to say because I know sometimes you don't get lucky and sometimes you don't get the opportunity. So
yeah,
it's like a tricky thing. So I can only speak for like myself and like my life. Like I feel like it was exactly when I was supposed to.
Yeah.
And I feel really grateful.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. Like I think your guys' brand is one of the most recognizable Canadian brands out there.
You.
And to just know you and hear your story has been so cool. And I'm going to see you in a couple hours at the Chocolate Cure Fashion Show. And we're going to talk a little bit more and try to raise some money for cancer.
I know. I can't wait. It's going to be so fun.
It's going to be exciting.
But yeah, I'm really happy I got to meet you too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we're done.
There you go. You did it.
Yeah.